All right, Chat HD Show, News Talk 790 KFYO. Just started talking about Rick Perry dropping out of the Republican presidential primary. And joining me right now to talk about this and more, dealing with election 2016, Republican political strategist, co-founder of MustReadTexas.com, Matt Mackowiak. Matt, good morning. How are you?
Hey, Chad. Good morning. Doing great.
Great. Thanks for coming on today. Rick Perry dropping out on Friday. It's not shocking that he didn't get the nomination, but are you surprised that his campaign ended so quickly?
Yeah, I am. He had grown so much as a candidate. I mean, we'd seen that over the last 3 years. He'd studied so much. He'd learned a lot. He'd traveled the world. He'd given lots of speeches. He'd done tough interviews. I mean, he really had gone back to school in a sense, and recognized that he was unprepared last time, and he really spent 2 or 3 years getting prepared this time. It's a sad irony that the debates are what did him in last time, and in this campaign he didn't even really get a chance to debate on the big stage. He had the one JV debate on Fox, but he was not going to be in the primetime debate on CNN. And that's the one thing that's surprising to me, is that he chose to get out, on Friday with the CNN debate on Wednesday. He still could have had some type of sort of breakout moment there on CNN in the JV debate, particularly with Carly Fiorina in the primetime debate. That said, I think they looked at it and they said, look, our staff are volunteers. We have no money. Our path to the early states is very, very tough. All the signs were pointing to this thing being a really, really, really tough slog. And so I think he just said, look, I've got a great life. I'm going to go focus on, my family and business and do something else. And I think that's basically what happened.
You look at his resume, and obviously we here in Texas, well-versed in it, but arguably one of the best resumes in the field. Republican, Democrat, whatever, one of the best resumes in the field, and he could not connect with voters. Why is that? Was it that he was someone who ran previously and voters are not too keen on that in this election cycle? Or is this all because of Donald Trump, or is it a mixture of other things?
I think you're seeing basically everyone but Trump, with the possible exception of Carson, that is being hurt by Trump, getting all the attention. And, it's very, very hard to get attention right now, and it has been for the last couple of months. That said, I think in Perry's case, he had really made a very poor first impression in terms of the last campaign. And he really, I think, convinced people he was unprepared to be president of the United States. And that's a very hard bell to unring. Even though he spent, as I said, 2 or 3 years, really working to grow as a candidate and as an elected official. And it's clear that he was much more prepared this time. And I think people saw that, but it was still a big enough problem that you just couldn't get a second chance to make that first impression. And it was just too big of a hill to climb for him. I mean, the biggest problem is he only raised about $1 million from the day that he got in mid-June through, I guess, the end of that month. So it was only about 2 weeks or so, but really he hadn't raised any money before that, and so he had very little money on hand. He had a pretty good staff. He had field staff in the 3 early states, and so when he got to that point where he couldn't pay staff anymore, it started a death spiral, both in terms of the operations, but also in terms of the perception. He looked like sort of a desperate campaign that was going nowhere, and I think it just sort of collapsed on itself.
Visiting with Matt Mackowiak. Matt, the new Washington Post ABC News poll has come out, and of course Donald Trump, number 1, Ben Carson, number 2 in this poll. But I want to ask you about maybe some of the top-tier candidates that maybe should be worried right now. Are they going to suffer the same fate as Rick Perry of just running out of support, running out of money? Scott Walker immediately comes to mind. He's at 2% in this. You have Jeb Bush, who is at 8%, and then Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio at 7%. No one else above 5% in this race. Who should be extremely worried out of the top-tier candidates?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that Walker and Jeb come to mind when you look at those numbers. Now, look, national polling numbers don't matter that much. They're almost always reflection of name identification, particularly this early. But the trend line, does matter. And Walker has fallen, faster than anyone else in the field. And historically speaking, when you are at the top and you fall to the bottom, it's very hard to come back in presidential politics. And there's lots of examples of candidates that don't. There are exceptions, with John McCain being one, and Rick Santorum, I guess, maybe being one that went from nowhere to winning Iowa. But again, those are the exceptions. And again, this cycle is unlike any other, given that Trump is. Here's what's so remarkable about Trump's position, Chad. He leads nationally, and he also leads in all three early states. I can think of no one on the Republican side that's been in that kind of position. Usually you might lead in Iowa and then maybe also South Carolina or New Hampshire, but not Iowa, because those states are also different in terms of their electorates.
Yeah.
But Trump's leading all three early states. So Walker, he's given a big speech today on how he's going to go after labor unions as president. He still, I think, is going to be a major factor in Iowa and has a chance to win or do very well there. But look, even Jeb. Jeb's down in single digits now nationally, and he was, essentially the national frontrunner 6 or 9 months ago. So there's a number of candidates here, I think, that are on a negative trend line, and they want to turn things around. And the next chance to do that is at Wednesday night's debate.
What is it with Scott Walker that, is not connecting with people? Is it almost, I think, a Tim Pawlenty, which, media said great candidate, but just maybe too bland, not able to connect? Is that what the problem is with Scott Walker?
Well, the criticism that's out there is that he rose too quickly on the strength of one speech he gave in Iowa in January, and that the candidate himself and the campaign itself were not prepared for him to be the overall frontrunner, or at least the Iowa frontrunner at that point. He spent much of the next few months settling a budget disagreement at the legislature in Wisconsin. He's also studying foreign policy, national security issues. He's had a couple slip-ups on the campaign trail when he's been asked about issues like the northern border or foreign policy questions or birthright citizenship. And so I think the stakes are very high for Walker at the debate. He needs to show people, not just that he can do a good job at a debate, but he really needs to have, I think, a breakout moment to change the negative stories that you're seeing about him in terms of the polling trend line. He really needs to have a very strong debate, and he knows it's kind of on him at this point. So yeah, as I said, he is definitely having a tough time. Carson, you're seeing him surge, and so when you add, Trump, Carson, and Fiorina together, those are the three outsider candidates that haven't been really in politics that much. So you're seeing the outsiders succeeding, and you're seeing the existing elected officials are having a very tough time.
Overall, what are your expectations for the CNN debate?
Well, I am expecting fireworks between Carly Fiorina and Donald Trump, and I was expecting them even before Trump's, outrageous comment about Carly Fiorina's physical appearance. If you remember the last debate, Fiorina went after Trump, even though they weren't on the stage together. But she's gone after him since then, after the Megyn Kelly comments and on a couple other occasions. So I really do expect a very strong back and forth between the two of them. And it's very different for a male candidate to attack another male candidate versus attacking the female candidate. Trump may think it's no different, and he'll probably call her a failed CEO and a failed Senate candidate. But if he goes beyond that, he's going to get into very, very dangerous waters. But look, there's a number of people that need big moments. You look at Rand Paul; he's been totally missing in action in this race the last 2 or 3 months. He has to have a big moment. Chris Christie needs to have a big moment. Obviously, there'll be a lot of eyes on Ted Cruz, who's in, I think, the 4th position at the debate, but wants to have a great debate. So everybody's got something they need to achieve, and with 11 candidates up on the field, up on the stage, it's not going to be easy for all of them to have breakout moments.
Yeah, I think everyone better watch out for Carly Fiorina. I'm looking forward to seeing her.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Matt, what can people find on mustreadtexas.com today?
Yeah, obviously, a number of stories about Perry getting out of the race. Obviously, still covering the 2016 race. There's also a Houston Chronicle story about George P. Bush and the time he's spending campaigning for Jeb Bush. That's been posted. You can find all that news and opinion and blog stories at mustreadtexas.com.
All right, Matt. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Have a good one.